Good evening, council, staff, members of the public. May I have a mover and seconder to call the meeting to order, please? I have councillors Garwood and Thompson that the regular meeting of the Council of the Township of Springwater, September 18th, 2024, come to order at 6:45 p.m. All those in favor? And that has carried. Please join me in the singing of our national anthem. Councillor, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest this evening? Councillor Garwood?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I am going to call conflict on item 4.1, request for donation for student transportation to the Elmvale Fall Fair Parade, presented by the Floss Agricultural Society. I am currently the second vice president for the Floss Agricultural Society, so therefore I will not be participating in the vote.
Thank you, Councillor Garwood. And with that, at this time, I will call upon Linda Murray to have our presentation, please.
And the employees of Springwater Township for the wonderful day that you did on Saturday. It was phenomenal watching everybody come together and celebrate. And I think that's a perfect segue into why I'm here today, where we're getting 7 schools together to participate in the Elmvale Fall Fair. And it's one of the greatest traditions that we have. It's a long-term tradition that we have, and we would like to continue with that. And I'm here to ask for some financial assistance to help pay for the busing for our out-of-town schools. A lot of them are asking like 12 buses to bring all the students to the fair. And that's the cost that we know that transportation has gone up, and that's not a part of a budget usually. So we're asking for some funds for that. And we feel that having the students at the fair is very vital for our community, for our township, because of the agricultural roots that we have and the diversity that we have. The new diversity, the new ethnic diversity that we have in our township is growing. And I think that we need to continue to educate our new neighbors about farming, about the way of rural life. And they get an excellent piece of that at the fair through all of some of our exhibits that we have, a lot of the farm animals that we have, the competitions that we have. They learn things. We have the other agencies, Eggscape, I think it's called, where it helps further the education for these young people. And we really do think that that is part of why we need them. And it is wonderful to watch 2,000 kids come into the Ball Diamond of all our schools. We got to have Forest Hill this year with us, and it was like they had always been with us. And it was fantastic having them. And it's really nice to see that they ask questions. If I see them And it's youth from all the schools. They call me the fair lady and they ask, are we going to the fair again? Are we going to the fair? And then they'll start talking about all the things that they learned at the fair. Just not the rides and the candy and the food, is everything. Like even checking out tractors and seeing tractors and machinery at the fair is something new. Some of them have never been up that close or been allowed to be up that close to the machinery. So I feel that it's a good learning curve for us to continue to have the youth at our fair.
Great. Thank you very much, Linda. At this time, I'm just going to ask for a mover and seconder to have it on the floor in open discussion. I have Councillors Fisher and Thompson, that the delegation from the Floss Agricultural Society regarding a request for donation for student transportation to the Elmville Fall Fair Parade be received, and then we will look to any amendments after any comments from everyone. And I would definitely say that the ball diamond with 2,000 students is definitely wonderful and chaotic all at the same time, but the energy that comes from that space and that place as they're making the announcements and the awards is something very, very special. So at this time, I will turn to members of council. I have Councillor Fisher and then Thompson.
I just wanted to comment, actually, you brought it up, Linda, students from Forest Hill, Forest Hill School is the opposite end of Springwater, and I totally agree that the agricultural educational aspect is really excellent. Both of my daughters went last year, and they were ecstatic. They had lots of stories to tell. I do agree with you. It's more than just the rides, and I think that is, although that's a lot of fun. The flickering lights and cotton candy. There's something much more there with the rural way of life, as you say, and they told me about the livestock, about the farming implements, about the displays inside. So I'm really glad that they took something from it, and I am glad to see that it is a bit of a, let's say it, come together moment for the youth of Springwater and some of the new youth of Springwater as well. So I guess my ask from you is, I know last year when you came and it was a big success. I know that because my family benefited from it. How much are you looking for?
I'm looking for 5,000, and that would be divided amongst the schools that do
Yeah.
busing.
I see. Okay. So similar to last
Yeah.
year, I think the
Yes,
exact
yes.
same amount.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they were very appreciative of it.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Thank you for that. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair to Miss Murray, thanks for coming. I'm certainly in support of this. Again, that was my question as to how much the ask was. And if my memory serves me correct, last year we took it from the swing fund. Can somebody verify that? Okay.
CEO Schmidt's got a head nod there, but we don't require a verbal. Yes, it was from that fund. At this time, council, we can, oh, sorry. Deputy Corral.
Thanks very much. No, I just wanted to comment. I mean, living up there for going on 40 years, the Fall Fair's been basically an institution. I'm somewhat disappointed the school board doesn't see it that way and help offset the costs. But I know that last year it was very successful, and hopefully the weather's going to hold up this year and they'll be out there. And you know what? The kids do have stuff that they enter too, which is kind of cool because not only for them, but the parents and visitors can see some of the stuff that these kids have put in and what they've worked on. So thank you.
I have the list of what they entered.
yeah, I would actually, just going back to what I was saying before, I really think the educational aspect is something that we can't ignore. And I think that this is an investment that pays huge dividend. 2,000 kids for $5,000. I think it pays huge dividend for us, and I'm a big supporter of agriculture, as I think we all are here on this council. So I would propose that we take $5,000 from the swing fund and pay for transportation as we did last year. So,
And a seconder for that, Deputy Cabral. So I have that an ad that council hereby approves a donation of the amount of $5,000 to assist with the busing costs for the Springwater schools to attend the Elmville Fall Fair Parade for 2024 to be funded from the proceeds of the Springwater Swing. Anything on that amendment? All those in favor? And that has carried, and we would just need to go back to the main motion as amended. So I had it originally moved by Councillor Fisher and Thompson. So it'd be the main to receive as amended. Anything further, council? All those in favor? And that has carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Once again, we will have the largest student parade in Ontario. Thank you.
Council, we now move on to our question period, and I will turn to our deputy clerk for any submissions being received.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. There have been no submissions received for this evening's meeting.
Thank you. I will now turn to our audience. If there's any members of the public who wish to ask a question pertaining to our agenda this evening. Not seeing any. At this time, we'll move on to our minutes. May I have a mover and a seconder to approve the minutes, please? I have Councilors Garwood and Alexander that the minutes listed here and be approved as presented. The minutes of the regular council meeting of September 4th, 2024, minutes of the special meeting of council September 4th, 2024, minutes of the special meeting of council closed session of September 4th, 2024. Are there any questions on these minutes? Not seeing any. All those in favor? And that has carried, and we will now move on to our boards and committees. May I have a mover and seconder, please? Councilors Moore and Fisher. That the minutes of the Growth and Economic Viability Ad Hoc Committee meeting of July 10th and the minutes of the Agricultural Advisory Committee meeting of July 9th, 2024. Any questions on these minutes? All those in favor? And that has carried. Items for correspondence. I have a mover and seconder to receive the correspondence from the Simcoe County District School Board, please. I have Councilor Garwood and Councilor Fisher. That the correspondence from the Simcoe County District School Board dated September 9th regarding capital priorities be received, and that Council of the Township of Springwater advises that it fully supports the Simcoe County District School Board's capital funding request to the Ministry of Education, in an addition at Huronia Centennial Elementary School, that staff be requested to work with the SCDSB to expedite planning and building acts and approvals to ensure the timely construction of the addition, and that a copy of the resolution and the letter of support be sent to the Honorable Jill Dunlop, Minister of Education, Honorable Doug Downey, Attorney General, stressing the urgent need for the addition at Huronia Centennial Elementary School. Questions or comments on this? Councilor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Just a comment. I'm in full support of the correspondence. Of course, I think the addition onto Huronia Centennial Elementary School is much needed. The Elmville community has seen growth, not the growth that we've seen necessarily in the southern part of the municipality, but we are a community that is slowly growing. So the space is definitely needed, and I sure hope our council supports it.
Anything further, council? Not seeing anything. All those in favor? And that has carried. And may I have a mover and seconder for the RFP award for the growth management study, please? I'll turn to Councilor Moore and Councilor Alexander that the report from the planner regarding the RFP 2024-49 PLN growth management study dated September 18th, 2024 be received, and the RFP 2024-49 PLN be awarded to WSP for $195,193.50 excluding HST, and that the growth management study be funded from development charges to the extent eligible and the remaining balance from the tax rate stabilization reserve, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the contract agreement with WSP. And at this time, I'll open it for comments and questions. Councilor Moore.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Coughlin, to Director Heron. Because I feel that this report is so very important and for the future of our township particularly, I wonder if you could just give a high-level Coles Notes version so people don't have to dive in and look, feverishly for the report, that you could just sort of give a synopsis of what it is that we are spending the money on for the consultant. Thank you.
Director Heron.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good evening, Council. Currently, the township is updating its official plan, and it's updating the official plan to project for growth to the year 2031. We realize that our growth is going to exceed 2031 based on what we have in terms of development in front of us today. The current provincial policies require municipalities to plan for population and growth and employment and complete communities out to 2051. So this report will provide us the bedrock for the background that we will use to build a more modern and updated official plan. The benefit to the timing of this report is that it dovetails with provincial policy that has just been approved. So we had Bill 185, a bill to cut red tape and create more homes. We've just had changes to the provincial growth plan, which has been absorbed into the new provincial planning statement. And in both of those documents, it provides more responsibility to municipality to create its own future, as opposed to the previous policy regime where it was more of a top-down approach from the province. So the timing of this report is ideal in that council will have that ability to make decisions to decide on how growth will occur. And if we burrow deeper into what that means to the community, it means that we will have the ability to look at where servicing will occur, where we will prioritize development lands. We'll have a deeper look at parks and road access and stormwater management. We'll have a better understanding of in the urban areas, which are currently somewhat true, but not wholly true, bedroom communities. And the idea is to plan for those bedroom communities to be complete communities. So we will be looking at expanding our employment lands. We will be looking at the park lands and basically live, work, play where we are, where our residents live and work. It will also be looking at the rural component and the agricultural component of the municipality and needs for growth there, or adjustments to the growth policies to reflect also provincial policy, which states protection of Class 1 agricultural lands. So in a nutshell, that's hopefully where it will take us. The report is, the study is expected to take, I think, 10 months. We'll call it a year. From there, we would want to move immediately into the new official plan update. So ideally, within 2 to 3 years, we should have a new official plan to help guide growth. So the population will understand where they will be living, what type of housing they'll be in, where they can go shopping. And we, Springwater will be more independent from the larger Barrie market.
Councillor Moore?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Coughlin, to Director Herron, or basically to council, so they understand too that the study is a phased approach. So 4 phases, I believe, and that the Economic and Viability, the Growth and Viability Committee, we've asked that each phase come before the committee for a review of the findings, and I think they will also come to council at that time too, and make any tweaks or recommendations and sort of follow along, so that we're not waiting 12 months. We will get sort of phased progress report. Thank you.
Anything further, Councillor Fisher?
So through you to Mr. Herron, just in the face of what we're discussing with Barrie and the land situation, would this play into that? Would this, and I'm directing this to CIO Schmidt as well, is this this growth strategy and commitment to growing in certain areas, is this something that provincially they would take note of in terms of us being very, call it, independent and having a strategy that would maybe push back Barrie's wants?
CEO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through you to Councillor Fisher. So Councillor Fisher, what I can say, obviously, the discussions we're having with Barrie is confidential. And so what I can say is that, obviously this study will assist us moving forward in the future. But this study will be completed I would assume well after our discussions with the city of Barrie. So I'm not really in a position to really comment any beyond that.
Councillor Moore?
Thank you. Through you, please, to Director Herron, just excuse me, one more question. I understand there's changes coming again to the provincial policy. Are they out now or are they coming again in October? And do we know what that's going to look like?
Director Herron?
Thank you, Your Worship. We do have a good sense of what it will look like. Planning staff met with the county planning group. We have seen white papers from legal commenting, and we have a good idea of the synopsis. The province has indicated that the new provincial planning statement, I have to wrap my head around the new terminology, will be in effect on October 20th. It does implement much of the legislation that we saw that came into force through Bill 185. There are significant changes in the sense that when it does come into force, the growth plan for the greater Golden Horseshoe will no longer be. It will be deleted, and portions of that plan will be rolled into the new provincial planning statement. So in essence, much of it remains the same, but there are different approaches to how it gets done. I think the key thing to take away from this is that the province is providing more decision-making authority to local government in how they can achieve 1.5 million homes by relying on the wisdom and knowledge of local government and how it can best occur locally.
Not seeing anything further on this at this time. Counselor Fisher?
Yeah, through you to Director Herron. With this study, will there be, and I'm sure there will be, a focus on traffic and mitigating traffic with the growth that we're planning?
Director Herron?
Thank you, Your Worship. The study will rely on background information that we are putting together through the Master Transportation Plan, which is currently underway. So what this growth plan study will do is it will absorb information from the Master Transportation Plan, the Master Stormwater Management Plan, and the Master Infrastructure Sanitary and Water Plan. They're all underway. There's also the Parks Plan that Council recently dealt with. All of this background information would get absorbed into this study and somewhat morphed into what a growth plan would look like for the municipality. And it will give us an idea of where, based on transportation linkages, where is the optimum lands for employment growth. And subject to updating the economic development study, we would have a better idea as well of, since once we determine where those lands are, what type of employment that might be appropriate to incentivize to go on those lands. So there's a trickle-down effect to the growth of the municipality moving forward. A little more than the focused answer you were looking for.
Cancel all those in favor. And that has carried. May I have a mover and seconder for our action reports, please? I have Councilors Thompson and Moore that actions reports 9.2 to 9.4 be received and that the recommendations contained therein be approved as presented. 9.2 is the authorization of the transfer of portions of 0.3 meter reserve for Huron Creek. This is, sorry. Just want to make sure I have this right. It's the Huron Creek Phase 1C. Providing 9.3 is providing professional services to the Severn Sound Environmental Association, and 9.4 is 74 Yonge Street, and that's a security reduction. So at this time, Council, I would ask for any that will be pulled for conversation, for redirection. Deputy Cabral?
9.3, please.
Thank you. Any comments or questions on remaining 9.2 or 9.4? Not seeing any. All those in favor? And that has carried. So we will now move on now to 9.3, the professional services to the Severn Sound Environmental Association. I will have that moved by Councillor Alexander and seconded by Deputy Cabral. And at this time, I will look to Deputy Cabral for comment.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I do have some concerns with this one. Because the question I ask myself with this is, do we have the capacity to provide these services ourselves? And reading the staff report, it was obvious that we did not. And I think that might have been sufficient to indicate to the Severn Sound Environmental Association that Township was not in a position to provide these services. However, the next question I ask myself based on the report is, do we as a municipality hire staff in order to accommodate the SSEA's request? And I would suggest, thinking to myself as a taxpayer, that it's not appropriate to hire unnecessary staff in order to accommodate an outside agency when those same services that they're seeking are actually available elsewhere, including many, many private accounting firms. I can think of one right there in Elmvale, or simply hiring someone to look after those tasks themselves. Understanding that the Severn Sound Environmental Association is a service partner, we also have to be clear they're a service provider, no different really than Aqua or the NVCA, in the sense that Aqua provides water and wastewater service to our residents, and we compensate them for providing that service on our behalf. While it's nice and friendly and absolutely neighborly, I don't think anybody buys a lawnmower or a snowblower that you don't need yourself just so that you can mow your neighbor's grass or plow your neighbor's driveway. You have those items because you need them for your own purposes. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense that our township would undertake to hire new staff in order to accommodate an outside agency's needs of finance, bookkeeping, payroll, etc. Would also say that we don't need to undertake assuming anyone else's potential issues, problems, or possible liabilities. This township already has its hands full. I guess I'd be looking at, would we hire another mechanic without the need of one ourselves, simply to undertake to provide vehicle maintenance services to Nottawasaga Valley Conservation's own vehicles, simply because they made a request for us to do that. So to me, township, even though they're going to be compensated for the services that they provide, we are going to hire an individual that we don't need in order to provide this service. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, especially when the services, as I said, could be acquired elsewhere professionally by contract. They could hire their own individual. I would be remiss if I didn't point out that right in Elmvale, as I said, there's a small business that seemingly provides the exact services that SSEA is looking for. So I really struggle with hiring someone that we don't need, even though we're going to be compensated for half the position. It just doesn't make any sense to me that we would be doing that. I know that there are service partners, they do great work, but at the same time, they're a service provider, and they are compensated, and we pay them to provide those services. So I will not be able to support this, and I just wanted to share that with everybody on council so they know where I stand and why I won't be supporting it.
Okay. I have Councilors Alexander and then Thompson.
Sorry. Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Okay, so we're gonna agree to disagree on this one, Deputy Mayor Cabral, which happens at the table, and that's fine. I do think this is a service partner. It's someone we work closely with. I feel that the services that they're looking for, if they have to go outside for those services, they're going to probably have to go outside to more than one firm to get these multiple services. So it kind of makes sense for them to come to a one-stop shop. As you noted, they are paying for the services, so it's not like we're giving them to them for free. And then as well, they are, as we said, they are a service partner, and we truly kind of do this already. And I know our library is pulling out of this, taking kind of some more control of their finances. But for the past, well, at least my term on council, and I think quite a bit before that, the township does provide those services to the library, the payroll, the finance, that piece. So it's really very similar to what we are already doing, except for in this case, we are getting, we're getting compensated for the service. So I certainly understand the concern of the extra role. And if we want to look at potentially having visibility into what is coming to us very closely in a budget, if we are expecting to have more financial roles coming at that point, to ensure that if we move forward with this position, it would align, so that other 0.5 would align to that. I think, that would be prudent to ensure that we're not just hiring someone for an extra half of a position. But I do think it is important for us to support our service partner, especially when they are willing to pay for that compensation. So that piece of the work is not costing the township anything.
I have Councillor Thompson.
I find myself, Mayor Coughlin, agreeing with Deputy Mayor Kerbel. I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around this. One question I do have for Director Bedard. Councillor Alexander did talk about the library, that we have been doing this in the past for the library. And as we're transitioning the library out of the township, their finances, having the library do it, would we not have capacity to look after this without having a new hire?
Director Bedard.
Thank you, Mayor Collin, and through you to Councillor Thompson. The library component will free up some staff time, but it will not be significant to accommodate the SSEA's needs.
And I do have a list of going on here. I do have Councillor Garwood, Deputy Cabral, Councillor Fisher. I'm also just going to add my comments to this. And I did speak to Councillor Alexander prior to this, and just so council is aware, we do have Julie Cayley on with us this evening. Should we need for any further clarification, they have made themselves available. My concern with this is that as a council, we have approved our strategic plan, our strategic vision. We are onboarding into our finance department service Springwater, which is something I'm very excited about. I think it's going to add a lot of it's going to add a great service for our residents, that they were fully utilized. And I think that if this is a priority for the township, if we feel that this is going to happen, my fear is that when we accept this or approve this in a few months, when we get a list of program changes that are going to enhance, or I'm going to say lighten the load within the corporation or right size us, that this might prevent us from doing that. And I want to make sure that as we do onboard new staff, that it is in line with our priorities, and it is our internal priorities and not that of an external partner. So I will go to CEO Schmidt, and then Councillor Garwood, Deputy Cabral, and Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Mark Ogden. Just listening to some of the comments here tonight, just to provide a little clarity. So as much as the SSCA is a service partner, they were actually created as a result of 8 municipalities, Springwater being one of them. They're actually a joint municipal service board that was created as a result of Springwater and the other 7 municipalities. So they are a different composition than Aqua and or the OPP and or NVCA and or others that I would classify as a service partner. So again, we, Springwater, one of 8 municipalities, created this board. So just to be clear, they only exist because all 8 of us agreed to create this board. And so just for clarity. And the other piece is that Midland, Tay right now provide for this service right now for the board. And I know of in my previous life working in King Township, we had a joint municipal service board for the Holland Marsh shared with Bradford West Gwillimbury, and Bradford West Gwillimbury provided similar services to the board. So there are examples out there. I just, again, want to make sure council's fully aware. I'm not suggesting that you should support this or not. I just want to clarify that there is a little bit of a nuance there with regards to the establishment of the SSCA.
Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. When I read the report, and personally, I don't see this tonight as us making a decision in regards to bringing the SSEA's finances and HR in-house. The conclusion of the report does state that it is recommended that staff negotiate a memorandum of understanding to provide professional services that reflect the best interests of SSEA and the township, and to report back for further direction. So personally, I read that as we are providing, should council choose to move forward, a partial green light to continue and further the conversations with the SSEA, while also giving council the opportunity to have this discussion down the road when that information further comes forward. So Councillor Alexander and I, we've spoken significantly about this, and I've been back and forth on the matter. I as well share similar concerns as other members of council in regards to, we are close to budget, and understanding most likely staff will have a list of program changes that will come forward, and I wouldn't want us approving a position halfway through September to negatively affect what we might do in a month and a half from now. So I could support the motion tonight with a slight adjustment that when it references in the report to come back to council, it's during budget time, so we can have this discussion in regards to the need for a position or not, inclusively with other program changes that would be coming forward, so we can appropriately determine whether or not council wishes to make that investment at that time.
And you see Councillor Moore, and I'll add that to it, but just for clarification on that, I too was of the understanding or mindset that this is a possibility that it could come forward during budget. And then during the few minutes between our meetings, I spoke to CEO Schmidt, who said that, and I won't put words in your mouth, I'll allow you to speak to the viability of this coming forward during budget.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and through you to members of council. So I guess my concern would be is if council's supportive of the memorandum of understanding and staff working towards that and bringing it to council, and then council not agreeing with it. It's a lot of time and effort put on staff at this time of the year. And if council's not going to support it, then I would suggest that be considered tonight, to be quite honest with you. And I guess to your question, Mayor Coughlin, there is a transition period that's going to have to happen here. And I know Executive Director Cayley is on the line here tonight as well, that maybe could speak to this. But there is going to be some time here that's going to have to be required in order to transition. And that's what's happening right now, even with our library. We've been taking the last couple of months here to transition the library and aiming to have that completed by the end of this year. We're already kind of behind the 8 ball here. So if we don't get direction tonight, I would hope that, Ms. Cayley would be in a position whereby if council says no, she has a contingency plan to move somewhere else to try to get these services. Time is ticking for the SSEA, in my opinion. But that, again, Julie maybe, or Ms. Cayley may be able to speak to that better than me.
I do see Ms. Cayley on, if Ms. Cayley would like to add comment to that.
Thank you, Your Worship, through Your Worship to CAO. There's a lot of moving parts. This wasn't really something we expected that we'd be needing to do this year either as a municipal service board. We've made this move once from Midland to Tay, so we know there's a lot of work involved. 3 months alone is not a lot of time for us to get those pieces together, and or have to then figure out some other process if no other municipality is interested in taking us on. I think that would be a challenging, I know that would be a challenging, it's already a challenging position to be in right now, looking to negotiate where we might be able to get these services. It does speak in our agreement with your municipalities that we do use a municipality as our treasurer, and for our HR work. So it would really, for us, it's ideal and more cost effective as well. And for us, I mean, as the partnership to move by the deadline of December 31st for a couple of reasons. One, we've already asked the Township of Tay for an extension to the deadline once. So we would, would certainly be looking to do that again if we're going to try to wait through a budget term. And then the other is even just the cost of having audits mid-year. Being able to complete an audit for 1 year would be better than having to split years. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. And I do have Deputy Cabral, Councillor Fisher, and Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And it's difficult because I do know some of the staff at the SSEA, but I really struggle with taking on an additional staff member and in half-time, but getting a full-time position when it's being driven by external forces. Now, if staff had said that they had the capacity to do this and be compensated for it, which meant that we were able to accommodate them, I likely wouldn't have much of a problem with it. The problem is that this hire is being driven by an external force, and it's not something that this municipality has a need for itself. That additional capacity might be useful down the road, but to be quite frank with you, I don't think we'd be sitting here if the SSA had not reached out. And I certainly understand that they might be struggling to find these services. But I also know of another municipality that basically was provided the same information and asked to provide the same services, and in a nutshell, didn't have the capacity and simply said, we don't have the capacity. But here we're sitting now looking at hiring an individual because one of our service partners, and yes, they were created by the 8 municipalities, but let's also be frank in the sense that they're much larger, much more sophisticated, and provide a lot more services and have more employees now than they ever had before too. And I think maybe through that maturity and growth, maybe it is time that the SSEA bring it in-house for themselves. So that's why I say I have such a hard time with this. The impetus for this hire has nothing to do with the municipality of Springwater. It has to do with trying to be nice to a partner agency, but I would still say that taxpayers, if presented with this, would struggle with hiring somebody we don't need in order to basically provide a service to an outside agency. So for those reasons, I guess like on the show, I'm out.
Councillors Fisher, Moore, and then Alexander.
Thank you. Through you, a few questions for CAO Schmidt. I listened to what Councillor Garwood had to say there about putting it off towards the budget. There's some credence to it. I think we're sort of kicking the can down the road, as it were. But what I was wondering, Mr. Schmidt, you'd mentioned that would put us sort of under the gun in terms of preparing for the MOU. Is that really a constraint for us? Is it a considerable amount of work for staff to prepare if we were to put it off till budget?
CAO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor Colgan. Through you to Councillor Fisher. If I can reflect on the MOU with the library, it's taken quite a bit of time, although there was some delay, obviously, with staffing. So, we're still working on the MOU. I believe it's possibly in front of the library board now, and will hopefully be coming to council here shortly. So it does take time and effort. It touches on a number of different areas. That one does, and so does this one. It touches on finance, it touches on payroll, it touches on HR. So it does touch on a couple of areas. I guess the only other thing would be is that understanding timelines for budget. We're talking about presenting budget in November and typically not having approval until December. And so that really doesn't provide the window of time that's required in order for the SSCA to determine whether or not this is a yes or a no. And the comments, I guess, regarding the staff member, I see the comments here, and they are what they are. I think at the end of the day, the township does need the staff member. So whether or not you see it in this year's budget or whether or not you see it in next year's budget, you're going to see a request for a junior financial analyst at some point. There is a need, and I think Director Bedard has mentioned that within the report. We were trying to look at this as, again, a partner to try to assist the SSCA, but also there is a benefit to the municipality. Yes, it comes at a cost, but it comes at a cost that is somewhat subsidized, if you will, by the SSCA. So again, there is a need for this junior financial analyst from a township perspective, just to be clear. But is it this year or is it next year? That's ultimately council's decision. I'll leave it at that.
Follow on, Councillor Fisher?
Just a few questions. One that was actually brought up by Councillor Thompson with the, we'll call it withdrawal of the library no longer needing our services. Is it plausible? I know it was said that it's not an exact matchup, you know, in terms of workload, but how close is it? You know, is it something, I'll just throw this out there. Is it something for the interim where that withdrawal allows for the SSEA to move in? There's no hire for now, but we do take in the revenue from the SSEA, and at a later time, maybe in the next budget, we can look at a junior financial analyst. Can we look at it, I guess what I'm saying, is something transitional, right? Where the workload shifts from library to SSEA, we take in the revenue and then transition to a junior financial analyst. Have you given any thought to that, and what would it look like?
Director Bedard?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and through you too, Councillor Fisher. We did look at alternatives. With the library withdrawing, you know, the library is integrated into the township a bit better than SSCA would. We would essentially be preparing two different sets of books and doing financial analysis and reconciliation and reporting specifically for SSCA. So it would be difficult to integrate a workload like that into our current operations without that dedicated resource.
Councillor Fisher?
So what I'm hearing is a new hire is imperative. Yeah, okay. And what was the revenue amount that we would take in from the SSEA? And also, what would a projected salary be for this new hire? I guess I'd direct that to CAO, whoever wants to take it.
Director Bedard?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. The approximate annual salary and benefits would be about 110,000. We estimate the employee would spend half of their time supporting SSCA, the other half with us, so the recovery would be around 55,000.
Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Just a couple of comments and consideration for part-time. Obviously, is there room that we could, for 55,000, hire a person for 2.5 days a week as we maybe transition toward a full-time position? But secondly, in my day job, we do this quite often. So we support some of our local nonprofit organizations because they and we as Ontario Health can offer things like IT and HR and payroll and all the things that are costly. But just like Councillor Alexander said, you know, it's a basket of services. It's not just one service. So I certainly see the value for the $55,000 for both. I think it's really important that we help out our service partner too. But is there, or has there been consideration then for a part-time employee for now? So sounds to me like it would be split right down the middle.
Director Bedard?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. From a recruitment perspective, you know, we have trouble filling full-time permanent positions. A part-time position requiring the skill set that we need to perform this work would be difficult to attract and difficult to retain. And if we lost that employee, that would create additional work for our existing team that's already at capacity. So it would, in my opinion, be difficult to accomplish with a part-time resource.
Councillor Alexander?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Is there opportunity, given the discussion at the table, and again, I know we are a month and a half away from budget, but I also know that staff works on budget probably 6-8 months in advance as they kind of start figuring out the program changes and stuff that they're coming to request, that at our next meeting, they would be able to bring forward kind of what they think are going to be the finance. If we are looking at an additional finance role already, if we have the opportunity to look at that as a whole right now, to ensure, as you know, kind of the conversation has gone, that those skill sets are going to match, or if not, because then that kind of gives us a more fulsome picture of the decision we're making.
Director Bedard?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And when we were evaluating this role and the skill set needed, we do see that need, as a complementary to the township's finance department. When we look specifically within our budget and financial reporting division that we recently created, we haven't brought financial statements for this year to you for review and approval. That this position would help in the creation or the work in the background to prepare those statements, to prepare financial our analysis and reporting. So the skill set we're looking to recruit for, if we move forward, would be very complementary, and it would help for that business side on the township.
Councillor Thompson?
Through the chair to Ms. Cayley, and correct me if I'm wrong, I've heard here that Midland had done your financial services, and then Tay is presently doing them, but has given you a deadline of December 31st. Can you share with us why these two municipalities stopped providing these services for your organization?
And we're just promoting there. Ms. Cayley?
Thank you, through your worship, to Councillor Thompson. I cannot. I'm not sure I could answer that. They might be able to answer it better. I'm not actually sure any of the financial people in Midland would still be there who were there originally when we moved. I had just started, and that move included a move of location as well at the time. They were moving us out of the building we were in, so I'm not really sure. I mean, I could probably go back, but I doubt there'd be a lot of explanation in the resolution coming forward. And Tay, I don't have it in front of me, but the same, it would probably, they're the ones who know why they made the decision within their current situation. I will add, we have spoken, obviously we've been meeting pretty regularly with the staff in the Township of Tay who currently do our financials and our HR work, and they have indicated to us that we are not so-called a burden to them, that we're just part of their business. So that, was, as far as we know, was not an expression of what the issue was.
And while I have you, Ms. Cayley, and before I do go on to Deputy Cabral, Fisher, and Garwood, I'm understanding that Midland used to do it, Tay has done it previously, and now the SSEA is looking for interest from municipalities. Are there any other municipalities that have expressed interest or a willingness to bring the services in-house?
Thank you, Your Worship. None that would be willing to do it this fiscal year.
But no other municipality has suggested that they would be able to entertain this.
Thank you. Yep, Your Worship, that's correct.
CEO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I'm going to propose something here maybe then as a transition. So to Councillor Moore's point, and Director Bedard, don't hit me here. To try to assist the SSEA, if council was on board with hiring a permanent part-time position to assist, we could bring on the SSEA and assist them, have them fund the position. That said, just to be very open, it'll give us an idea or some time to assess the position, and you may see an ask in 2026 to bump this position to a permanent full-time position. So I'm just being very open with you that we could try this. Again, Ms. Cayley is indicating that they're kind of at the last straw here. Again, I'm just trying to provide for other options that council might be able to consider here. I'll leave it in your hands.
Thank you. I do see Councillor Alexander for additional questions. I do have a list. I see the hands going up, but just on that point, regardless of whether the employee is full-time or part-time, they have a manager and a director and a CAO that are all going to be leading them. They're still going to be coordinating this project. It's going to become a portion of the focus of our finance department. It's not just the dollars that are attached to this that is of a concern to me. It's that it's our vision. Like I said, not the entire Service Springwater is going to fall underneath finance, but we're onboarding a lot of different initiatives, whether it's our app through IT or Service Springwater. And these are our initiatives that we're championing and moving forward. And while bringing on a part-time employee where it's fully cost recovery to the SSEA is more palatable, but it's still, I don't want to say a distraction, but it will still take away from, well, it's a distraction. So I did have, and I'm gonna go to Councillor Alexander as the chair of the board. Was yours an additional question, or was that in response to something that has been said? And I'm sorry, it's hard to gauge when people are virtual.
It was going to be in response to something that was said, so I can wait.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. You know, we keep hearing about how it's going to be subsidized. Get that out of your head, because it's not subsidized. There's no subsidizing going on here. They're paying for the services that they're providing. We would be paying for the additional services for that position that really doesn't make sense to me, because we're still going to be creating a position because of an outside agency asking us to. So to suggest that it's going to be subsidized and that's a bonus, no, it's not, in my opinion, at all. Somebody else is paying for that service. What it will do, and to the mayor's point, is dilute our own needs and our own directions. Because there's going to be another apple in that barrel, not the same as the rest of the apples that are in the barrel. And once again, it's not that I don't believe in partnership, but I really struggle with this being an ask for assistance that we don't have the capacity for, and then suggesting that we would hire a person half-time to fulfill the needs for the SSEA, but we're still hiring a full-time position. And kind of like a bit of a concerted effort to try and make that fit somehow into what's going on. But that's not what's in the report. The report's pretty simple. SSEA is asking for us to accommodate them, and what our position is we would be able to do it, but we would have to hire a full-time person, and that they would pay for half. Well, that leaves half an additional person that we're taking on now that we never planned on doing. And I do have one question for Julie, if she's still available. Is she? I just
Ms. Gailey's still here, yes.
Right. Want to know, Julie, if you don't mind, have you reached out to any management firms or accounting firms that might be able to provide you some kind of an idea what the costs would be to have it done privately? Because at the end of the day, we're actually, as much as we want to help you, we're taking business away from the private sector by doing so too.
Ms. Gailey.
Thank you, through your worship. We have not. There'd be some other steps that would be involved for me in the process of doing that, including, so currently we as an organization don't have our own business number. As a joint municipal service board, we operate under the Township of Tay's municipal number. So there'd certainly be some cost in looking into what that even looks like for us transitioning into, like you're speaking to, some private service. So we have not pursued that at this time. We're pursuing what we were directed to by our board and through our agreement. Thank you.
Councillor Fisher.
Two questions. First, for Julie, for $55,000 a year, would it not maybe be prudent to hire somebody part-time within your organization?
Ms. Gailey.
Thank you, through your worship. I think, for me, it would be the same answer as I just gave. We would certainly need to look at that in terms of, even just getting ourselves set up with payroll software, with treasury software, all of that, tax roll number or tax numbers, all of those things.
Thank you. And the memorandum, or sorry, the request did also, not just finance, but there was an HR component as well. So again, back to Councillor Alexander's point, the sticking to the municipalities is kind of that one stop shop, but I guess it's mindful for council. This isn't just about a member or extra weight on the finance department. This will pull across. So I'd have Councillor Fisher, Garwood, and Alexander.
Just a question and then maybe a quick statement through you to Director Bedard. So the position that you'd likely ask for in the future, which I'm sure is likely warranted in your department, if you were to have that right now or in the foreseeable future, would that be a full-time job? Or would you, in terms of capacity, would this individual, well, I'll let you answer that first. Would it be a full-time job in terms of their workload?
Director Bedard?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. That is correct. In the report, it's mentioned a few avenues or areas this position would be responsible on a part-time basis if this initiative proceeded. If it doesn't proceed, as CEO Schmidt alluded to, there will be a program change forthcoming to provide additional support to the finance department. And I'll just go back to the position we're in today in September without audited financial statements, that this position would greatly assist with the back end accounting, the financial analysis, the budget prep, the budget support, and really providing some business continuity when we see other positions at capacity or other positions out of the office.
So I guess what I'm worrying, and maybe I'm hearing you wrong, if we were to hire right now for your department, in terms of capacity, it would be full time, right? SSEA off to the side, right? So it sort of goes back to what the deputy mayor and mayor were saying, not to throw a wrench in it, because I've gone back and forth on this subject, but at that point, it doesn't become a subsidy. It really just becomes, added work to an individual who would already be filling out the capacity of one job, right? I hope I'm probably not making a lot of sense when I said, but so I just sort of worry about capacity. What I was hoping for was a net benefit. We take in $55,000 a year, and it would subsidize that person. But if somebody's already at capacity, if we were to hire somebody, it's really not a net benefit, right? If anything, we'd be overworking somebody, and then I would fear that we'd probably come back looking for a part-time person on top of that person. Am I hearing that correctly? Or?
Director Bedard? Sorry, yeah.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I understand where you're coming from, Councillor Fisher, that there is full-time need in the finance department for this skill set. If we proceeded with SSEA, we'd have to phase in some of the work that we were doing to not overload them with their township role. But that said, there is more than a 0.5 FTE need in that budget and financial reporting division.
Councillor Garwood?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to CEO Schmidt. Two-part question. The first part would be, assuming there's no term length on this agreement, should we proceed? But if you could just speak to that. And then secondary to that is, can you speak to the last time we have added a full-time staff member to the finance department? I can't recall this term us approving what position, but I could be incorrect in that.
CEO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So to answer through you to Councillor Garwood, to answer your first question, really that's up to council when in the MOU is to determine if you want to have a clause or an expiry date. That's really up to council. I'm not sure, and Ms. Gailey may be able to speak to this as to their other MOUs that they have with Taya or Midland, whether or not there was a fixed term. Again, that's something that we could put in play, whether it be 3-5 years, whatever the case may be. As it relates to, I'm kind of delaying because I'm trying to think about when the last time we hired someone in finance. I think the last hire was an APAR coordinator, if I recall, and that might have been in 2021 or 2022. Sorry.
Councillor Alexander and then Councillor Moore.
Okay, so there's a lot of things going on here. And I do appreciate the discussion and the fact that I feel like there is potentially want for potential interest in this. I think there's some that are not, but I think there's some that are trying to figure out a way if there is a way we can make that work. And I do appreciate that. I do think, to Councillor Moore's point and CAO Schmidt's point, that if we have the opportunity to hire part-time, the position, I'm not even going to use the word subsidized, it's covered, it's paid for, and have that person transition into full-time, knowing that we are going to need the work. If that's more palatable, then that's definitely of interest to me. Or if that's not more palatable, if people are, again, ideally, I think if we could do the full-time, and then that does provide the financial department with the support, it gets us away from hiring a full-time person at budget time. So it's really only half of the cost. And although there is a different, it's not a 1-for-1 balance that we've talked about as the library transitions out, there will be a gain in time from that will be given, that will again end up offsetting that position that, even if it's hired at full-time and we're only paying part-time for those, as the library transitions out, that person will be able to move more into the financial needs that are needed. So again, it's allowing us to move forward with that full-time position, in my mind, with really only paying the half-time salary. So I'm open to either, but I'm happy the discussion is happening at the table and people are at least showing interest in this.
Councillor Moore?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Coughlin, to the clerk then. I'd like to put an amendment forward that we move forward with the MOU with the understanding that the position would be part-time, permanent part-time, and open to discussion for a length of term or what a transition plan would look like. But that would be the gist of the amendment.
You have that there? Perfect. And a seconder for that, please. Councillor Alexander. And Council, I do have. So I have tried to keep track. So everybody has had a few times to speak to this. So at this point, we have an amendment on the floor. So if there's any discussion pertaining to that council directs staff to recruit a permanent part-time position to assist the SSEA. So this would not be moving to a full-time position, but part-time position. I think for myself, I think it's understood, but that the entire cost of that position would be absorbed or paid for by the SSEAs. Thank you. And comment on the amendment.
Thanks very much, Mayor Coughlin. I think I might be able to support something like that, but I would like that part-time position to be a contract part-time position that coincides with the term that is affixed to the contract. The memorandum or whatever they're going to enter into, that part-time person would be tied to that contract specific to the SSEA. And at the end of it, if it came about that we were looking for a full-time person or another part-time person, even, they could be augmented at that point in time.
Councillor Moore?
Thank you. So my question then to CEO Schmidt would be, does that negate the permanent piece? So I'm saying permanent part-time, and that would then not be a contract.
CEO Schmidt?
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, to Councillor Moore. So I believe the Deputy Mayor has put forward that we'd be hiring on a contract basis, so it would not form part of our permanent, our staff complement. So yes, the individual at the end of the contract, if we don't renew, essentially that position would be no longer with the township, is the way I understood that.
Sorry. Thank you. I'm not in favor of that. Sorry, Deputy Mayor Cabral, but I feel like we already, as Director Bedard said, we struggle to get employees. I don't want to make this more difficult than it needs to be. I think that we just put it out as permanent part-time because we and with the understanding at council that this will transition to full-time. So I don't know why we would muddy that. So yeah, I'm not in favor.
Sorry, my own mic. I think that remaining with the permanent portion of it, it is the only way to really attract and retain employees. I have Deputy Carl as a follow-on. He wanted to clarify, and then back over to Councillor Thompson.
And just to clarify, I'm suggesting it be tied to the contract as a full, part-time contract position for the duration of the contract. Because the reality is that if staff, our own staff, this position, if you think about it, doesn't need to be tied to Springwater Township per se. It could still be a contract position onto itself. If staff during the period of time realizes that we actually have the need, which it sounds like we do, I would suggest at that time we hire a full-time position to meet our needs, not to share with the SSEA. That is the reason why I'm suggesting that it be tied to the contract and that it be a contract position part-time for the duration of the contract to work specifically for the SSEA. And then if we need additional staffing, it'll be up to staff to bring it before us. And if it's a full-time position that they need, that's what we should give them, you know, as opposed to part-time here, part-time there. This meets the SSEA's needs, and it also does not tie us into having to worry about what this full-time position is going to do on the other side. If they want to ask for a full-time position as part of the upcoming budget, this can still be totally a part of it. So I'm just putting it out there in that respect because this is something to basically service SSEA. I think the part-time position does it. I think it does it even better if it's tied to the contract for the 4-year period. And if another municipality decides to take over that contract after 4 years, if that's the contract period, they're all close enough that I would suggest that whoever's in that position might just move with it. Or at that point in time, SSEA may be able to bring it into their own house. But that's why I can support it if it's tied to the contract. But other than that, I still won't be able to support it.
Thank you for those comments. And as we do have an amendment, and I do have the list, we do have the amendment on the floor. So at that time, if it's not supported, you could then put forward a secondary amendment. Councillors Thompson, Alexander, and Fisher.
Through the chair to CO Smith. So the HR piece that they're looking for, do we have a cost on that, or will they be paying for that as well, or will that be looked after through the MOU?
CO Schmidt.
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, to Councillor Thompson, my understanding is it's all encompassing. So the majority of the service that's going to be provided or that's required by SSE is more from the financial side. There is an element on the payroll side, but in talking to our HR department, they feel that it wouldn't be a, you know, I think, and Ms. Gailey can confirm this, I think the number of staff that they have is maybe 15 to 20 staff. So it's not, I would say, significant in that regards, if you will. So I don't think there's a huge pressure on the HR department. They're, you know, we may assist them with posting some of their jobs should they be recruiting, but we have a new payroll system, a new software system that's pretty efficient now. It has definitely assisted in our recruitment and speeding up our recruitment processes, less manual intervention, if you will. So I would suggest that you know, there wouldn't be as much of a burden, if you will, on our HR staff.
Just to follow on.
Mm-hmm.
So just to follow on, so if there was a legal issue that there sometimes is with employees, the SSCA would pay for that if it was their employees?
CO Schmidt.
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, to Councillor Thompson, in my opinion, yes, that would be their cost. And those items could be further spelled out in the MOU.
Councillor Alexander, and then Fisher.
So I wanted, I want to direct this to Julie, just because I don't want to put words in her mouth, just as sitting on the board for the SSEA. But I think when we're looking for, when SSEA is looking for support for this role, it's not per se for a term of 4 years. I think there would obviously be an exit clause, because if either party, you know, is not happy, you have a predetermined amount of months, year, whatever it is to remove ourselves from the agreement. But I don't think the SSEA is looking at moving this service around every 4 to 6 years or whatever it is. If it works well and it's working for all parties, you would just continue with it because there is the cost with associated and all that difficulties. But I'm just gonna allow Julie to confirm that.
Ms. Kaylee?
Thank you, through your worship, to Councillor Alexander. That's correct. I think the current agreement is a 3-year fixed with after that 6-month notice out clause, which is what Tay gave. Thank you.
Any other additional comments? Councilor Fisher, I did have you down here, but there's been a. Okay, thank you. All right, so council, we do have an amendment before us, and this would be to onboard that the council directs staff to recruit a permanent part-time position to assist the SSEA. And that's the MOU's up top, correct? Right, yes. So this would just, perfect. So council, that's before us. No, I'm not even gonna ask if there's anything further. I'm not seeing any hands. Council, all those in favor? And that has carried. So council, we are now back to the main motion, which is that the report from the Director of Finance, I guess I just read my that the report from the Director of Finance regarding providing professional services in the Severn Sound Environmental Association dated September 18th, 2024 be received, and that council directs staff to negotiate a memorandum of understanding with the Severn Sound Environmental Association for the provision of professional service and report back to council as amended. Council, all those in favor? And that has carried. Thank you for joining us, Ms. Bailey.
Thank you, your worship, and all of you have a great evening.
We're now moving on to our information reports. May I have a mover and seconder for the information reports, please? I have Councillor Garwood and Fisher that the report items listed herein be received as information. Provincial Planning Statement 2024 update and Building Service Monthly Activity Report. Anything on these action reports? Not seeing any. We will, all those in favor? That has carried, and I will now turn to Director Herron for our development update.
Thank you, your worship. I have one update received from engineering today, an update from Crozier, who are doing the work on Finley Mill Drive. There's currently a one-way setup for traffic as they perform that work. We've been advised that that one-way setup will continue for another possibly 2 to 3 weeks before it goes back to 2 weeks, two-way, pardon.
Deputy Mayor on our county update.
Thank you very much, Mayor Coughlin. It was a rather interesting last county meeting. I guess the biggest issue was a report from the Governance Committee with respect to the composition of Simcoe County Council. They came out with kind of a recommendation with respect to reducing the size of Simcoe County Council to 16 members and also the potential for a full-time warden. Anyway, there's been things in the news about that too. Very, very lively debate with some members saying things should stay as they are for specific reasons. Others understanding the concept of reduced government and, advocating for that. Many members did believe that a full-time warden was a valuable decision to make for council. And after much debate, lively debate, it was actually referred back to staff, and council had opportunity to submit further questions with respect to that topic. And I don't know exactly when it's coming back. Mayor Coughlin, would you like to add to that?
It's being referred to the Governance Committee, and we meet on Tuesday, I believe, then to have the report go back to County Council as fast as we can. Yep.
Thank you. Just a question on that. With the proposal for the reduction, are the voting members weighted equally?
No, so currently the suggestion in the report was that the current weight would remain the same. So at the County Council, if you put your hand up and you vote in favor of something or not, but as soon as there's a recorded vote, vote called, that's when the weight comes into play. Before county council right now are simply the portions of this potential change that require the 2/3 majority. So the weight of each individual member doesn't require 2/3 majority at the lower tier. So those would come forward. Basically, this is the first step. In the report, it did say if there was a 17th member as a full-time warden, the warden would receive equal weight to the minimum the ESSA or Tay, the smallest municipality. So that's the way it was being proposed at this time. All right, so municipal updates, and before we do go to our ward by ward, we will first wanted to kick off and just thank everyone who came out to celebrate with us. Our Celebrate 30th was this past Saturday, September 14th. It was an incredible event. We think that there was approximately over 2,000 people who came in to celebrate. We had an amazing lineup of homegrown talent, a barbecue, plenty of activities, and an incredible fireworks display. I want to thank our Lions and Lioness who came together to provide the barbecue, and that line did not stop, and it seemed to just continue to grow. But they worked diligently to get everyone fed, and NutriFarms and Fox's Bakery for the donation. And thank you to the organizations who came out to assist in providing education about Springwater and what makes us so unique. We had the Springwater Sports Heritage, the Springwater Culture and Heritage Committee, the Springwater Lions, Ontario Clean Water Agency, Severn Sound Environmental Association, Nottawasaga Conservation Authority, Huronia West OPP, Simcoe County Paramedics, and Springwater Fire and Emergency. We also had the Pure Country Tailgate team keeping us going, the circus schools from Barrie and Collingwood. It was absolutely phenomenal, and doesn't go without saying that Erica and Ethan were a welcome surprise, the winners of our talent contest, and Graham Scott Fleming and Dana Reed, who put on incredible acts. The fireworks seems to be the biggest hit. People continue to talk about what an incredible show that was. So thank you again to Duranium for their sponsorship in that. Most importantly, to our Springwater staff, everyone had a smile on their face. They were running around, greeting guests, and I really think that the energy that came from our staff was echoed in our residents. It's hard not to smile when someone's smiling at you. So the second you got there, you were greeted by many, many people in blue shirts. And my dad even made the comment, he's like, wow, your parking department is they're really great staff. And I was like, Dad, we don't have parking, let alone event staff. So it was just everybody felt they got their role and they executed it incredibly. So thank you very much, especially to our Dean team for making that happen for us. But yes, thank you to everyone for celebrating with us. It has been stated many times before, our people set us apart and makes our community just so special and unique. So thank you. And I will turn to council for additional comments.
Perfect. Thank you.
Councilor
Just want to let everyone know about Autumn Fest on September the 28th, Saturday, September the 28th. I think all of us have been there at one time or another, and great event in Village of Midhurst. Brings everyone together. It's by the Midhurst Pavilion. So if you're not familiar with it, come on out. Lots of new residents in Midhurst. There's always people moving in. So I encourage everyone to come out. Also familiarize yourself with the pavilion, because that's where we have our skating rink in the winter, right? So it's a year-round facility. So hope to see everyone there.
September 28th. Councillor Thompson.
So after you attend the Midhurst Autumn Fest on September 28th, we invite you over to the Anton Mills Artisan Craft and Food Fair. We have over 30 vendors. It's always a great event. You can come there to buy your Christmas present for me, and you can also at 10 o'clock, it starts with a 2 toonie breakfast, and we encourage you to come and to support local. I also add to the sentiments of Mayor Coghlan what an outstanding job our staff and sponsors did for our 30th celebration on Saturday. I would add a suggestion that perhaps we should start serving ice cream in the council chambers every council night, and I'm sure the gallery would be full.
Councillor Alexander. Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coghlan. Yes, just to start, in regards to the 30th, I can't believe the amount of people who have reached out over the past week that have spoken about how incredible our staff are, how amazing the facility is, because a lot of folks have never even been here to see the space and see what we have to offer here. So again, just a fantastic opportunity to connect with so many folks, see so many people from every ward in this community, which is very special. Following the theme of fall events, of course, the Elmville Fall Fair is just a few weeks away now. A little over 3 weeks, October 11th and 12th, at the Elmville Community Arena and the fairgrounds there. The fair is one of our largest events in the municipality. We're expecting roughly 8,000 visitors to attend our fair over 2 days, which is exciting. As always, the fair continues on with its tradition, but each year we're adding more, investing more back into our fair and into our community. So we're quite excited about that. And something that I wanted to definitely highlight is the fall drop-in programming at EDHS. Of course, that's an important facility, one that I know a lot of our residents utilize, and I understand the schedule is now out. So if you're interested in pickleball on Tuesdays, basketball and volleyball on Wednesdays, and basketball and volleyball on Saturdays, we're seeing the scheduling and the programming continue to expand. The numbers are showing that folks are continuing to come on out and utilize the space, and I know they appreciate a opportunity to connect with one another in the community. So thank you to staff for continuing pushing that forward, and we'll see you there.
That's great. Deputy Cabral?
I just wanted to comment on the 30th. It was a fabulous day. And I want to thank the powers that be for a fabulous day weather-wise too, because it was absolutely outstanding. So didn't want to let that slide by. Somebody helped us out on Saturday.
That. Council, before we do move on to our notice of motion, we are at 8:12 right now. We can be back at 8:20. We'll just take a quick break. All right, we are after 8:20. We are looking to resume. We will now move on to our notices of motion, and the first I have this evening is from Councillor Alexander. And a seconder for this, please. Deputy Cabral, and I will turn to Councillor Alexander to read her notice of motion.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. That council direct the clerk to seek invitational proposals for the services of an integrity commissioner to perform the duties mandated through the Municipal Act, and that the proposals be presented at the October 16th, 2024 regular meeting for consideration.
Thank you, Councillor Alexander. And further comment?
Yes. So a couple things. I just want to make very clear my intent with this motion. The intent of it is, I did feel that for the $27,000 that the township paid for the last report that was presented to us by Mr. Swayze for 2.5 pages of content, and when he came to the meeting, he was unable to ask many of the direct questions to him, I feel is just completely ridiculous. So the motion is just regarding what we paid for. I would implore that this council, the discussion around this table, remain on the intent of what my motion is. I do not want to dive into the findings. We've hashed that out numerous times. That's not what I'm here. That's not why I brought this motion forward. I brought this motion forward in my mind, if this was any other consultant or contractor, and that was the type of work that we got for the dollar we paid, it is in our best interest to look to see if we can find someone else to do the work for us. So that is the intent of it. I'm hoping we can stay on topic. I would very much appreciate that. And I just truly feel it is prudent and responsible of us to look at our other options. And if the options that come back to us aren't any good, then we stick with where we are because we are mandated to have this role. But I do think we should look to see what else is out there.
Thank you. And I'll open the floor to members of council. I have Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to either CEO Schmidt or Director Ainsworth, invitational proposals compared to RFPs, RFQs, can we just define and clarify an invitational proposal?
CEO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor Coggan. Through you to Councillor Garwood. So Councillor Garwood, in the township's procurement bylaw, depending on the dollar threshold, so I believe it's 5,000 to 15,000, staff can go out and obtain 3 informal quotes. And then anything beyond up to from 15,000 to 75,000, I believe, forms a more formal invitational exercise, if you will. And then anything, of course, over 75,000, we get into tenders and RFPs and such. So again, it all depends. I'm going by memory here in our procurement bylaw. That's the authority that staff has to go ahead and procure these services. So I would suggest, my understanding is we typically spend less than $15,000 on this service each year. So I would expect that staff would be in a position to be able to go out and obtain 3 informal quotes from different providers.
Follow on.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And thank you, CEO Schmidt, for the clarification around the definition there. I guess my concern is, well, we might usually spend less than $15,000. We didn't this year. And I suspect part of the reason as to why this is here is because we have spent a lot of money this year. And I don't want to put words in Councillor Alexander's mouth, but I make the assumption that the idea is to let's find somebody and an integrity commission that would be more cost effective to the taxpayer. And if that is the case, regardless of the report or what we are speaking about, this year we've spent double that and more of what the invitational proposal falls within. So I guess that's my concern there. I have another comment, but I'll wait a bit further down.
You. Deputy Cabral.
Thanks, Mayor Coughlin. Appreciate that. I think the thing is, you're never going to know how much it's going to be, because normally there's a retainer, and then after the retainer, it's, whatever happens. But having said that, the only concern I have is it's kind of like a tight timeline. I'm just wondering if Councillor Alexander might consider maybe from staff what a better or easier timeline or time frame might be. I don't know whether that's too tight or not, but it seems to me it's just a little over a couple of weeks. So
CEO Schmidt?
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, if Director Ainsworth is online, maybe she can assist with this question or inquiry. I know that she's obviously procured these services in the past, so she'd probably be in a better position to answer the question.
Clerk Ainsworth?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. The timeline from a staff perspective does work. I would be ready to go out for seeking proposals by the end of this week, giving the proponents a couple of weeks turnaround time, with then a week before the agenda for that meeting would be released. So I don't have an issue with the timeline as it is.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Just through you to Councillor Alexander. I'm not bringing up the report. We are not here to talk about the report or any previous report. But I know you had noted earlier on, I believe in your statement there, about the length of the report. So in your opinion, if the report, let's say, was 17 pages long, would you still be bringing this motion forward in regards to seeking invitational proposals for an alternative integrity commissioner, or is that the primary issue?
Councillor Alexander?
Sorry. It's a bit of both. I think you could have a quality report in 2.5 pages if it showed research reaching out to multiple parties, investigation, if you will. I felt it was, and I believe I said it before, I felt it was something my daughter could have written. This is a lawyer. We pay a lot of money. I'm expecting a fulsome report with full information, and it certainly doesn't need to be 17 pages. I'm not looking to overpay. So it shouldn't cost $27,000 is really my biggest point. It should be somewhere in the middle. It should be full investigative report with facts and findings, and then I would have been happier. I feel like we paid a lot of money for something that was very poor quality, and I have a big issue with that.
Follow on, and then Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to either Director Ainsworth or CEO Schmidt, can you speak to the township's history with integrity commissioners in regards to how many we've had over the past, let's say, few years, handful, and previous processes in regards to changing those integrity commissioners?
Clerk Ainsworth?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Aside from Mr. Swayze, the township has had one other integrity commissioner that came into play when the legislation was passed in 2019, where it was mandated for municipalities to have an integrity commissioner. The contract for the first integrity commissioner was terminated prior to the end date, and then that's when Mr. Swayze was procured.
Councillor Fisher?
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Alexander's sentiments. Regardless of what the reports were about, regardless of what the content was, I believe that, I'll say it, the taxpayer was taken for a ride. We basically had 2.5, not even 3 pages worth of report, and it cost us an exorbitant amount of money. I was also, again, regardless of the content, I was not impressed with the timeline. There's over 4 months for it to come before us. 4 months and less than 3 pages. So I think regardless of what was written, it wasn't professional. And I know the point will be raised that, we're just going to get rid of something we don't like. I equate it to this, whether it's a supplier or an employee, you don't keep an employee around when they're doing a bad job simply because you let the previous one go in that position. So if that individual didn't do a good job, I think we as a council or as councillors who are stewards over the taxpayers' money need to definitely take a look at whether this individual is right for us, and if that means going out and taking a look at what else is in the marketplace, that's what we should do.
Again, before I move on, Clerk Ainsworth, I'm just going to direct this to you, but my sentiment, I did reach out to Councillor Alexander, and I do have concern about the optics of this, the changeover between our previous Integrity Commissioner to Mr. Swayze was after a report was received by council, didn't agree or didn't like the findings, terminated that, basically saying, well, I have grave issue with integrity commissioners as a whole. I think that, as I've stated before, the intent, the provincial intent to put a mechanism in place to hold elected officials accountable is a good idea, but I feel that it's readily used or misused by infighting amongst councillors across Ontario. Clerk Ainsworth, Mr. Swayze's contract, can you speak to when it was renewed and when it expires?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to council. Mr. Swayze is on his second contract with the township. It was renewed a year ago. So the contract was in effect September of 2023 and expires in September of 2027.
Thank you. So again, just the optics on it. A year ago, we as a council voted to extend the contract. And if we're suggesting that it's not based on one finding, not a lot has happened since that time. So as far as the notice that's before us, understanding that it's not a lot of work to put that out there and see what comes in. If it was to terminate Mr. Swayze, I would have a much harder issue with it. We did go with Mr. Swayze because he was the least expensive at the time. I'd be interested to know if there's anybody less expensive out there. So at the forefront, I was not going to support this at all and speak avidly against it, but it's literally just looking to see if there's someone cheaper out there with interest, that's interested in the municipality as well. So I had Councillor Thompson and then I saw Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So my understanding again is Mr. Swayze was hired on an RFP back in 2020 for the last 5 years. He's billed us on a quarterly basis and he's been under budget, my understanding as well, for those 5 years, other than the first 2 quarters of this year. And all of a sudden we don't like what we've seen with the cost of this report, and we had the contents of the report. Just a little bit about Mr. Swayze. For those that don't know who he is a lawyer who specializes in municipal law. We learned earlier today that we consider lawyers the ultimate authority. He has been a solicitor for many years and received his first appointment as Integrity Commissioner in 2008, 16 years ago, and has worked with over 60 municipalities. His open session report, which we don't want to talk about tonight, is available to the public and can be found on our website under Integrity Commissioner. Changing the IC isn't the change that I'm looking for, is that it won't address the change of behavior in question. Yes, the cost of the $30,000 report is a lot, but for me, it looks like a deal compared to the real cost. I think the cost of the behavior identified has cost taxpayers millions. This motion and vote gives us an opportunity to send a clear message to right a wrong. I won't be supporting this motion.
Councillor Fisher, Garwood, and Deputy Cabral.
Well, I agree with the mayor. I do worry about the optics, but I actually worry about the optics of allowing somebody to spend $27,000 and give us a 3-page report, regardless of what the contents of the report is. It was a misuse of taxpayers' money. Also, yes, you know, he seems to be the cheapest hourly, but when you bill us for a copious amount of hours for things we shouldn't be billed with, he ceases to be cost effective. And I appreciate Councillor Thompson's short biography there about Mr. Swayze, but you know, yes, we did renew his contract, and I have to say, you know, I apologize actually to the taxpayer. You know, I'll say this: I've done some research on Mr. Swayze. And his career with other municipalities. I'll leave it at this. But I would encourage other people to, you know, it's to look up Mr. Swayze and see what his dealings with other municipalities are. I think all of us, including myself, maybe should have done that previous to reinstating him this last time around. But I think that simply going out to look for a potentially more cost-effective fit for us, because like any employee or supplier, he is a fit. I think that there's nothing wrong with that to search for this. So I would support it.
Thank you. I have Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Respectfully, a way for us to save money and save taxpayer dollars is to not hire a lawyer to go at each other. And that's what has happened here. That's what's happened here. Not just this year, not just this report, not just this council. The mayor mentioned it. It's utilized across the province as a tool for politicians to go after each other. The intention of an integrity commissioner is to hold us accountable by the folks that we represent, not when we disagree or dislike one another to utilize it in that fashion. So yes, we spent $30,000 on a report, but that was our choice. We could have not. And we can continue to make that choice moving forward. So I'm not here to rehash the past. We're not going there. I'm not going there at least. But just remember, we sit here and talk about the billable hours of Mr. Swayze, regardless or not of Mr. Swayze's record or experience. This council has agreed for him to be our integrity commissioner. We renewed the contract last year and chose to file complaints and cost the taxpayer dollars. At the end of the day, we are adults. We have these positions because the community trusts us. We could have had those conversations at this table or not and saved the taxpayer plenty of funds. Just throwing that out there.
Deputy Cabral, and then Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I'm just curious if Councillor Garwood or Councillor Thompson reviewed any of the previous Integrity Commissioner complaints that were investigated by principles of integrity and compared that to what Mr. Swayze presented to us. I think if you were to do that, you might come away with a different picture of what was presented to council, that 2.5-page document. You'd also be quite interested to see how much detail and investigation was done on the previous complaints prior to them being presented to council. Contents, irrelevant. The context, how it was presented, what was done, the background, that's what I had some difficulty with. I don't have a problem with just going out there and seeing what else is available. I'd also would encourage you to look at Mr. Swayze's code of conduct that he presented to us, and I would encourage you to look at the previous one that we had by Principles of Integrity and compare the two. You know, I think if you did that and you had some background knowledge about them, and I would also hazard to say that when this first came into being, we went with Principles of Integrity because there was a bit of a carrot from Simcoe County, if I'm not mistaken. I think the amount was $2,000, and a lot of municipalities kind of bought into that. I might be wrong on the 2,000, but I kind of think that's what it was. You know, here's $2,000 towards it. But that's neither here nor there. There may be other integrity commissioners out there now that might be up our alley, might be more reasonable. But also, I'd like to point out that to the best of my knowledge, an integrity commissioner does not have to be a lawyer, but they should be investigators. So I'm okay with this. This doesn't tie us to anything. It's just reaching out.
I did see Councillor Alexander did have her hand up, but I do have Councillor Moore who has not spoke to this yet. Councillor Alexander, as is your notice of motion, I will go to Councillor Moore for comment and leave final comment with you.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And I know the next question probably is, if principles of integrity were so great, why don't we still have them? And that is, as good as they were and as thorough and extremely different from Mr. Swayze, it was because it was a non-decision at the end of their investigation, and then that ended up becoming something else. So it was just the inability to really, formalize a final decision. But I don't think there's anything harmful with going out to get, or see what interest is out there. Mr. Swayze is certainly the opposite of what we had before, and integrity commissioners are still fairly new to councils. So I don't think it's unreasonable to see what else is out there. Maybe somebody more moderate. We've got the extreme over here and then Mr. Swayze over here. I think somebody where we could meet in the middle would be really helpful. So I plan to support.
Councillor Alexander?
Okay, yeah, I will be brief. I agree with a lot of what Councillor Garwood said. I think it's unfortunate that we have to continually go to an integrity commissioner when we should be trying to deal with these situations ourselves, like adults, to be honest. They're there for a reason, and there are reasons to go there, but I think potentially we jump there too quick. And again, just speaking to intent, and I'm not looking into the comments, I'm not looking for how this goes around the table, but to my intent, the only time I have had any communication with the integrity commissioner was the night that he presented to us, and I asked him questions on his report that he could not answer. And that is my issue. So.
All right, Council, we have the notice from Councillor Alexander that Council direct the clerk to seek invitational proposals for the services of an integrity commissioner to perform the duties mandated through the Municipal Act, and the proposals be presented at the October 16th, 2024 regular meeting for consideration. Council, all those in favor? And that has carried. We will now move on to a second notice of motion. I will turn it back. Moved by Councillor Alexander. I need a seconder for this, please. Councillor Moore. This is pretty straightforward, Councillor Alexander. I'll just, that council hereby appoint Councillor Garwood as an alternate for the Severn Sound Environmental Association Board. I don't know that it needs to be spoken to, but Councillor Alexander, if there's anything additional? Sorry,
I'll be quick. It had come to my attention during our last SSEA board meeting that if I was not in attendance, then we had no voice at the table. Springwater did not have a voice at the table, and a lot of the other municipalities this term have been appointing alternates. So in the case that I'm not available, we would have someone to represent Springwater's interests, voting interest as a voting member. So that's where this has come from. Councillor Garwood is in Ward 1. It is his ward and my ward that the Severn Sound watershed touches. So while they certainly provide great benefit to the entire township, it's specifically our two wards, and he's done a lot of work with them and been a big advocate. So that is why I'm bringing his name forward as the alternate.
thank you. And Councillor Garwood, do you accept the opportunity?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Yes, I do accept.
Sorry, I'm just looking for a yes. Deputy Cabral had his hand up before. I just want to make sure we're good to go. Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I'm certainly not throwing my hat in the ring. I will admit, though, that it was caught me off guard, a little bit surprised, because normally alternates or members to any committee, all of council would get an opportunity to kind of think about it. But I had the same sentiments as Councillor Alexander had with respect to the two wards that actually deal most specifically with the SSEA and their activities. So I'm okay with it, but I just did want to mention that it's kind of didn't follow the normal process, so it did catch me off guard.
Thank you for that. And I did speak to Councillor Alexander about that, as well as typically communication would come from the board, SSEA, to the office of the mayor. The mayor would provide an appointment. Suggestion would then be ratified by council. So that was the typical process, and this was strictly just a simple alternate. So with the advice of our clerk, this was what was put forward before us. Not seeing anything further. Council, all those in favor? And that has carried. Any other notices of motion? Not seeing any items for future consideration. Not seeing any. May I have a mover and seconder to approve the bylaws, please? I have Councillor Garwood and Deputy Cabral, and sorry, and just for clarification, are we pulling? Okay, perfect. Yes. All right, so that the bylaws listed herein be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. Council, as you recall, the short-term rental bylaw, which was deferred from September 4th, the regular meeting. At that time, clerk indicated that we could provide amendments to that, so we will deal with that one separately. So at this time, we are looking to deal with 2024-074 Property Standards Bylaw, 2024-075 Appointment of the Property Standards Committee, and 2024-076 the Appointment of Property Standards Officer. Are there any on those three the additional? All those in favor? And that has carried. We will now return back to 2024-068, the short-term rental bylaw. And may I have a mover and seconder for this, please? I have Councillors Fisher and Moore. And at this time, council, we can provide amendments to the bylaw. Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. In conversation from our last meeting and discussions since, I've asked the clerk to provide an amendment in the background to reduce the minimum nights from 3 to 2.
And that is here before us. Section 3.2 of the bylaw be amended to reduce the minimum rental of 3 consecutive nights to 2. Anything further on that, council? Councillor Fisher?
It's like, can I propose an amendment now?
If you're looking for a friendly amendment, so we do have the
Yeah.
amendment as it stands on the floor.
Yeah.
So we can speak to that and see if we can.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
So no, I I agree with Councillor Garwood's sentiment from bringing it down to 3 to 2. Just in a few discussions I've had with people who have experience with short-term rentals, particularly in my ward, and I'm assuming in the south. Some of them do derive a lot of their revenue from one-night stays. They're giving me specific examples: people staying at the hospital, people staying in town for business, business with Georgian College, even visiting parents. And they said certainly the 3-night stay really affected them negatively, and they asked that it be brought down to 1-night stays. And I have to say, initially, I was opposed to this. I thought the longer the stay, the better. But in talking with them, I think that I would ask that we go down to a 1-night stay, at least for the interim basis over the next year until we revisit it. So.
Thank you. And before I do go to Councillor Moore, I just need a seconder for this, please. So this is the original amendment put forward by Councillor Garwood. I had it moved by Councillor Garwood, but I didn't grab a seconder just for, thank you. Councillor Moore?
Thank you. While I understand the one-night stay, I've done that twice. I've done that twice. Freudian slip. So I'll speak slowly. While I understand the one-night stay, I had always considered that as an owner-occupied scenario. But in speaking with Director Herron during the break, thinking now to defer this once again, to marry it up with the zoning piece, because there is some overlap still with, bedrooms and parking, how many guests in a bedroom, and then parking spaces, et cetera. I think, Director Herron, you were saying that it would, if you had extra time, you could marry these together. and make it more palatable. Am I correct? Or do you think we should move ahead with the bylaw with a couple of amendments and then amend those later down the road should we need to?
Director Herron?
Thank you, Your Worship. Staff are willing to work with council, whatever decision they make tonight, whether they approve the bylaw with these amendments you're discussing on a number of nights, or whether you defer it and bring it along at the same time as planning brings forward a change of use bylaw for the zoning bylaw and official plan. Either way, we will, at the end of the day, get two bylaws that work well together. So if council approves the regulatory bylaw tonight, and we find through further analysis, through change of use, that we may need to tweak this bylaw that's on for tonight, we can tweak it. There is a merit to approving the bylaw tonight, and that's staff are going to need some time to build a program. At the approval of this bylaw gives staff the opportunity to actually hire that staff that's going to be required for this programming. That takes time. And then that staff member will have to build a program as well. There's a whole slew of work to be done to around the creation of the licensing permit. I'm sure the clerk can provide greater detail on this than I could. So there is merit to going ahead with the decision so staff can proceed to actually build the program. And then planning staff will follow on with the change of use report. And through that change of use, if we have to, we can revisit the regulatory bylaw.
Thank you, Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and that through you to, actually, I don't need to go there, just a comment with respect to the word tweak. I just kind of thinking about yourself wanting to, Councillor Fisher saying one with, I got to admit, very valid reasons for people that are just staying. And then the point that Councillor Moore made about occupied and non-occupied, whether that's going to be included, is to maybe go with the one and enable us to tweak up if needed, as opposed to go into 2 or 3 days minimum stay and be impacting people who are actually deriving some financial benefit from this. That would be my only comment.
I think, and I think the only comment I would have is, I find in the municipal world, especially in bylaws, it's generally easier with less concern if you're making things easier or you're opening it up more rather than constricting more. So it would be my preference to start with 2. And if there's a lot of pushback, we also did hear from residents who are concerned about the big bang parties, the one night come in, destroy it, and you're gone. So like we said, it was a great open house. We heard a lot from both sides of this. So 1.5 is not an option. I think that starting with 2, and if it is too restrictive and we have people coming forward with that, we can readdress. I do see Councillor Alexander.
Yeah, it would be my preference to start with 2, and then if we need to go down to 1. Again, I do fear that 1 invites the big party. The majority of, I've stated a lot of VRBOs, whatever short, all these things, and it's always been a minimum 2-night rental. I think it's prudent to start there.
Thank you. I have Councillor Garwood and Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I was actually going to ask Councillor Alexander to speak to the Orr Lake perspective, understanding that we heard significantly from folks from that community. I know Councillor Alexander has heard from a lot of folks as well from that perspective. And again, respectfully, Councillor Fisher, I can absolutely see the 1-night, 2-night piece. I do agree. It's probably easier to adjust downwards than upwards. So at this moment in time, I would like to keep the amendment that I have on the floor as is, please.
Deputy Cabral.
Yeah, just on that part, I think the key piece here too is whether it's owner occupied or not, with respect to when the activities take place, because the fireworks and all that stuff, I don't think that's happening at a rental unit or a short rental term where the owner is there, whereas from what the other side of the coin is, where the owner is there and all they're really renting is a room for the night with use of facilities, I do see a distinction there. I'm wondering if that might be incorporated into the bylaw as far as that distinction made, if it's not owner occupied. Yeah, 2-night minimum stay sounds reasonable to me because you can't control it if the owner's not there. But if the owner's on site, and they're only renting out rooms to individuals, they might have a couple of rooms to make money off. I think there is enough of a distinction to actually say that owner occupied, maybe one night would be okay. Once again, my thoughts, I'm not saying no, I'm just saying maybe we need that distinction between occupied, owner occupied and not occupied.
Okay, I have Councilors Fisher and Garwood.
No, I agree with the sentiments of the deputy mayor. You know, I think we had great turnout and a lot of Orr Lake representation during the open house. But I actually think that in time, especially the majority of the Airbnbs, you know, particularly the ones I think people derive a lot of revenue off, will be more in the south. So we sort of have a bit of a tale of two cities here. But I think that the distinction is, you know, in the people I've spoken to who thrive on the one night rentals, they are owner occupied, right? And they definitely don't want the parties or anything illicit happening. So I would say that, you know, if it's multi-night stays on say Orr Lake at a cottage, fine, that's great. But I would say I personally, just again in talking with people, I would like to see a one night stay so they can keep their, I'll call it a business, up and running. But I would like to maybe amend it so that it is owner occupied, so we don't have parties and stuff like that. I think you'll also find too, the one night stays are rooms or small apartments inside of it. These aren't party facilities, right? It's not renting a cottage and tearing the place down. This is somebody coming into town, staying the evening, conducting business, moving on.
So on that, we could just simply add that no minimum night rental be applied or required for STRs that are owner occupied. I see a nod from Councillor Alexander. Are you okay with that as an amendment? If it's owner occupied, it could be one night. If it's not owner occupied, the minimum is 2. Thank you. All right. So we have that before us, council. So that section 3.2 of the bylaw be amended to reduce the minimum rental of 3 consecutive nights to 2, and that no minimum night rental be required for STRs that are owner occupied. All those in favor? And that has carried. Councilor, are there any additional amendments to the bylaw? So we will go back to, and there's Clerk Ainsworth. Clerk Ainsworth?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I was made aware of one other potential amendment from Councillor Thompson, and I hadn't heard that it wasn't coming forward. So I just wanted to flag that just in case this would be the time to propose that.
Councillor Thompson?
Well, the proposal was for the minimum amount of occupants or the maximum amount of occupants per bedroom, not include children under the age of 18. So if there's a family, if there's 2 families that want to rent a cottage and they've got 5 kids and there's 3 bedrooms, that it's not just 2 per bedroom, that children wouldn't count in those numbers.
Interesting. Could you elaborate on that for me? I'm having difficulty understanding, because typically when I appreciate that as a family of 5, but
so right now, if there's a cottage or a home that has 4 bedrooms, I believe the maximum would be 8, whereas 2 families that had 3 children, they could go to a maximum of 10. So if children don't count, and as an owner, I think I'd rather want to rent to 2 families of 10 rather than to 10 individuals.
Deputy Cabral.
I'm going to just step it down to a cottage type establishment, 2 bedrooms, that's 4 people. because that means you'd never really have any family there unless it was only one family. So I agree with that, Councillor Thompson. I think that's a good suggestion.
And so this would just be that 14.4, the bylaw be amended to provide that children aged, or minors, I guess, are not considered as part of the maximum renters. Moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Moore, or, yes.
I think you need to include some kind of family tie in there, because if you don't, there's a lot of 17-year-olds and 16-year-olds that can cause some grief, and they would be excluded from this number. So maybe a family unit, minors wouldn't count.
I'm just gonna turn to Clerk Ainsworth. What's the minimum age in order to actually rent a facility?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. The minimum age is 18. One thing council could consider is there could be concern of, groups of teenagers with 1 or 2 adults. Council could mitigate that by saying children under the age of 12 or 10 don't count in the maximum number, because then it truly is, most likely the children of those families or extended families that are within those rentals.
Councillor Thompson, are you amenable to that? Yes, I think that's excellent suggestion, Clerk Ainsworth. So that section 4.14 of the bylaw be amended to provide that children aged 12 years and under are not considered as part of the maximum 10 renters on the premise. All in favor? All those in favor? And that has carried. Any further amendments to the bylaw before we move back to the main motion as amended? Clerk Ainsworth, is there anything else that we brought up to you that we may have forgot since the meeting, or does that capture what you're looking for?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Those are all the amendments that I was made aware of.
Thank you very much. So council, we have the main motion as amended, and it's the short-term rental bylaw, which was deferred from September 4th, 2024, 2024-068 as amended. All those in favor? And that has carried. May I have a mover and seconder for the confirmation bylaw, please? I have Councillor Garwood and Moore, that bylaw 2024-077 to confirm and adopt the proceedings of council at the regular meeting held on September 18th, 2024, listed here and be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? And that has carried. And a mover and seconder for adjournment, please. I have Councillors Thompson and Alexander, that the regular meeting of the Township of Springwater is now adjourned at 9:05 p.m. to meet again on regular session on October 2nd, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? That has carried. Have a good night.